बेल आइकन दबाएं और ऑक्सफैम इंडिया के चैनल को ज़रूर सब्सक्राइब करें।
The Transboundary River Brahmaputra flows through Tibet, India, and Bangladesh. In India, it flows right through the middle of Assam, where it is aptly called the lifeline of the state. Since ages, this mighty river has been providing livelihood and sustenance to millions of its dependent population through agriculture, fisheries, and other vital ecosystem services. Traditional fisherfolk are a critical stakeholder to the sustainable management and conservation of the river Brahmaputra. However, with the changing climate, increasing population pressures, commercial exploitation, and a degrading Brahmaputra, all these factors have pushed the traditional fisherfolk to a corner. This video is an attempt to spark a conversation around the need for a basin-wide approach towards water governance and fisheries conservation and management in the state of Assam, including transboundary cooperation between multiple countries. The interviews capture insights from not only from experts working in the state machinery, but also from traditional fisherfolk who are at the front line. Thank you for speaking with us, Anupamji. Can you quickly give us an overview of the Brahmaputra River and the state of fisheries in the state of Assam, including catch statistics and the role of wetlands?
The Brahmaputra River, it has actually a total length of around 2,900 kilometers. The river system in India. In India, it is around 900 kilometers, and within Assam, it has a length of around 740 kilometers. And the combined length of the river is around 4,000 kilometers, and it has a catchment area of around 580,000 square kilometers. And the commercial exploitation of this river actually is in between Dhubri and Tezpur stretch. This is around 300 kilometers. That we have to understand first. Now coming to the fisheries point of view, the Brahmaputra River has around 221 species belonging to 103 genera and 36 families, out of which commercially important species is around 35 species. So 35 species are commercially important in the Brahmaputra River system. And as far as a report of two scientists, Khan and Jingran, it is a quite, of course, it is of 1979's data. So we have a data saying that the Katla, Rohu and Mrigal, which we call it as Indian major carp, is also known as Gangetic carp. These are the natural inhabitant of Ganga river system network, which includes Ganga, Gomti, Yamuna, and Brahmaputra, as well as Indus river system in the North India. So it is rivers and the important tributaries. It forms the main habitat of these Indian major carps, which includes prize, Katla, Rohu, and Mrigal. So these are the three species, and these species are reported from Brahmaputra, the river, mighty Brahmaputra river, Kalang river, that's a tributary of Brahmaputra, Buridihi, Dhansiri, and Dikho. These are the 5 major tributaries from which actually these 3 species were reported way back in 1979. But then again, coming to the catch statistics, because then only we know what is the commercial exploitation trend. In 1996 and 1998, there is a report from Central Indian Fisheries Research Institute, which says that around 150.4 ton of fish is annually being caught, out of which major carp, which I said just now, this Indian major carp, it contributes around 13.6% of the total catch statistics. Minor carp, it comprises around 7%. Catfish contributes around 14.2%. Featherback, it contains around 5.8%. Hilsa, which is a transboundary fish, and as all of us we know, it contributes around 2.1%, and miscellaneous species contributes around 57.3%. So this is the catch statistics, and due to, as I said in the beginning, because commercial exploitation is only between Dhubri and Tezpur stretch, and the upper stretch of the Brahmaputra, beyond this Tezpur, due to sharp steep gradient and strong current at the surface as well as underneath of the Brahmaputra river system. So fishing with this existing indigenous craft and gear is very difficult. So this commercial exploitation is restricted to this entire 300-kilometer stretch. So now this is this is about the present scenario of fisheries in the Brahmaputra river. And coming to the entire system, entire basin, if we look at this Brahmaputra river system has plenty of wetlands, associated wetlands, along with the major river system. So this wetlands, it contributes around 1 lakh hectare, which is associated with the river system. These wetlands are locally called as bills. These bills, they contribute around 40 to 50% of the total catch, which is being contributed by the total, out of the total commercial exploitation, around 40 to 55% catch comes from the associated wetlands.
Chandraji, thank you for being with us. I would like to know from you, how important do you think the basin-wide approach is towards water governance and fisheries conservation and management?
Basin approach, what you have said, is has got paramount importance so far conservation is concerned, because if you see Brahmaputra Basin before 1950, the scenario was totally different from what you see today, because the Brahmaputra Basin level, that bed bottom level or the bed level, has drastically changed after 1950 because of that massive earthquake what we jolted the entire northeast, particularly affecting the Brahmaputra Basin, actually the Brahmaputra Valley, Barak Valley, entire Assam sector. You know, the river course has changed since then, and the siltation problem started massively, and degradation of habitat, what we call fish habitat, which has got paramount importance so far as fish population in the river is concerned, because that entirely depends upon the fish multiplication, that is fish breeding, so that generation is established. It has got tremendous effect, because since then we lost more of the breeding grounds, and like most of our bills, what we call wetlands or bills in Assam, has got connection with the river Brahmaputra. Now you can't see those like feeder channels, what we call, or the connections been still in the intact position, what we are not receiving still the inflow or the outflow from those areas, because those bills or the wetlands were the breeding grounds for the fish population of Brahmaputra Valley. If we have to plan, think of planning of conservation on basin planning, then we have to take into account all of these points or the things which has got vital importance. Now, if you see Brahmaputra Basin, most of our people, if you see, almost out of 238 lakhs of hectare of fisheries resources in Assam, of which almost 50% belongs to bill fisheries sector. That means so much is dependent, so much of fisher folks are dependent Their livelihood depends on these bills, and the impact that is created because of depleted population in those bills, which is the result of having impact on the river Brahmaputra basin. So we have to be very, very carefully, meticulously, we'll have to plan, taking all these things into account.
আগের নদীতে আর এখনের নদীতে আপনারা কি পরিবর্তন দেখছেন?
আগের নদী গভীর আছিল, এখন গভীর নাই। আগের নদী পরিষ্কার আছিল, এখন পরিষ্কার নাই। আগের নদীর জল পরিষ্কার আছিল, এখন খোলা। মাছের ক্ষেত্রে বিভিন্ন ধরনের পরিবর্তন আছে, যেমন রৌ, ভকুয়া, শিঙি, মাগুর, কই মাছ, ইচা কমি আছে। মাছ কমে যাওয়ার কারণ হল প্রায় মানুষে আজকে মাছ মারি আছে, যেমন কোনো ভালো কোম্পানি নাই বা বিভিন্ন ধরনের কেমিক্যাল নদীত ফেলাই আছে, তার জন্য গর্ভবতী মাছ বা ছোট বাচ্চা মাছ মরি আছে।
কিন্তু বড় মাছ তো অথচ নাই, ব্রহ্মপুত্রের মাছই নাই, মাছ কমে গেছে। ছোট মাছ মারে, ছোট মাছের তো বহুত মাছ যায়, এখন বড় মাছ দরকার বেশি। এর মতো নদী নাই। আগেরকার নদী আছিল খুব সুন্দর, নদীতে ঘাট ছিল, সবাই নামতে পারছে, না মাছ মারতে পারছে। এখন তো ঘাট নাই, নদী কাঁচার হয়ে গেছে। নদী প্রত্যেক দিন নদী ভাঙে, এখন নৌকা নামাতে পারে না, মানুষও নামতে পারে না, নৌকা দিয়ে ফাঁকে যাওয়া হয়। এখন তো নৌকাও ছোট, মানুষেরও অসুবিধে, কীভাবে মাছ মারবো? মাছ মারাটা অসুবিধে, মানে একদমই অসুবিধা হয়ে গেছে। আবার নেত্রা বস্তু বহুতই ফেলায় মানুষ, এই জন্য নদীর জলটাও খারাপ হয়ে গেছে, মানুষের অতটা খাওয়ার খুব কষ্ট হয়ে গেছে।
অনুপমজি, how do you see the role of and the impact of climate change on this sector?
When we look at the impact of the climate change, there are a number of factors due to which there are some changes we are seeing, maybe at the regional level or probably at the smaller scale level. These fisheries as such in the entire river system, as all of us we have seen that it is being in a declining trend. And in the wetland systems, fisheries in the wetland systems are mostly is of capture based, but there are certain exceptions in which culture as well as capture, which we call it as enhancement fisheries, are also being practiced in some of the productive wetlands. But there also the catch is being declined. So we can summarize that the climate change has brought down the productivity level of the fisheries as such in the entire basin.
Chanjanji, besides climate change, what are the other factors that are adversely affecting the Brahmaputra Basin?
There are also other reasons, like so many regions are there, pollutants. And one program already the government of Assam is doing, and that may also, I don't say you directly or in the short term, but in the long term it may help of like dredging of Brahmaputra. So this may also like help in re-establishing the zones in a due course of time. Of course, I'll not say in immediate like in future course of time we may get the benefit out of it. So this will of course depend upon like how much or which part of the Brahmaputra basin has been taken into account. I'll tell you, almost like stretch of inside Assam, almost 729 kilometer long river, only you can say the exploited part is around 300 kilometers. We have some major landing centers where the fishes are being caught from the river Brahmaputra and landing is being done from where it gets distributed all across the state. You see, I'll tell you, Brahmaputra had been a very good river for Indian major carps. That has now been depleted to the extent that out of the total catch you get only around 12, 13 or 15% Indian major carps. It has gone down so much. Rest we get a mix of all species including catfish. So that has been a major depletion. You can easily understand from this data that how much the basin has lost the fish variety. You see today not only the river basin, because of the siltation problem, the silt gets accumulated in our wetlands, bills, and even the bills are now being silted up. There are other regions also. These are the major breeding grounds for the fish population of Brahmaputra, river Brahmaputra, and wherein the encroachment problem is there with the bills now. The siltation problem is there. Growth of macrophytes, huge macrophytes, because of siltation only, huge macrophytes growth in those bills. Until and unless all these things are restored and like a major program is being taken up with the involvement of government as well as some non-governmental organization also, frontline people like the organization that you are there. So definitely this should be a kind of like common approach for re-establishing the identity of river Brahmaputra.
মাছের চাষ করতে আপনাদের আর কি কি অসুবিধা হচ্ছে?
আমার কর্ম মাছ মারা, প্রায় 20 বছর ধরে মাছ মারি আছি। মাছ মারাটা কষ্টর জীবন, রাত্রে মাছ মারা লাগে, ঝড় বৃষ্টি তুফান সব মাথার উপর দিয়ে যায়। হয়তো পাইলে মাছ সংসার চলে, না পাইলে সংসার চলে না, বহুত কষ্ট হয়ে চলি। বিভিন্ন ধরনের মাছ মারি, ইলিশ, রৌ, ভকুয়া, চান্দা, ধতুরা, আরও বিভিন্ন ধরনের মাছ। বছৰত 7 মাস মাছ মারি আর 5 মাস বা হাজিরা টুকটাক করি চলি। আমার বিভিন্ন ধরনের সমস্যা, ভালো জাল নাই, নাও নাই, মাছ মারলে ভালো বাজার নাই।
মাছের হয়তো কখনো ছোট মাছ মারলে এখানে বহুত লোকসান হয়, বড়টা মারলে অল্প ভাল হয়, কিন্তু অথচ বড় মাছটা নাই, বড় মাছটা কমে গেছে। এই জন্য বড় মাছ থাকলে মানুষের কত সুখ হয়, অল্পটুক মাছের পয়সাও পায়, আর ছোট মাছের তো কোনো দরকারই নেই। ছোট মাছ যদিও পায় দাম নাই, গরিব মানুষের এইটুকুই কষ্ট।
We know that the traditional fishing community is increasingly struggling to eke out a living out of the fishing trade. How do you see the challenges faced by them, by this frontline community?
As I said, fisheries in the river system has become less remunerative, and fishing, there is a closure season of the fishing. It is around 3 to 4 months of time. So during the ban period, what we say it's a ban period. So the ban period, when fishing is banned in the main river system, or it is banned in the proclaimed waters, so the members of the cooperative society should have some alternative livelihoods with them, so as to or they should have some alternative plans as to run their livelihood. But most of the cases, what I have seen, these cooperatives do not have a contingent plan for the traditional fisher folks. As all of us we know, these fisher folks, they do not have a proper asset. You will be surprised to know they do not even have a proper housing facility. They do not have proper drinking water. They do not have proper sanitation facilities, and above all, they do not have their lands. Mostly the fishermen, they stay in a khas land probably. They do not have their own pattas. The land status is not good. Even they do not have their own land. And these fishermen villages, they do not have this sort of hygienicity. They do not maintain that. And of course, with the various other government schemes, and the traditional fisher folks are also getting some of the benefits nowadays from the public health department, probably through MG and Rega. But then their plight, their plight of the traditional fisher folks is not very good, to say, so to say. If we talk about the impact of the impact on the communities, the entire riparian community, which depend primarily on the fishing, or their primary livelihood is of fisheries, or rather fishing, are being affected. In the Brahmaputra Valley, it is mostly the scheduled caste community. Mostly in the scheduled caste community, there are a number of sub-communities, and in Barak, we have also a associated river, because apart from Brahmaputra, we have a Barak system. There, in that Barak system, we have another community called as Maimal community. So they are exclusively, their livelihood is only on fishing, and fisheries is the primary livelihood. So as the catch has dwindled, as I have already said, the catch has been declining. So and there is uncertainty also in the catch, because fishing is always a sort of uncertain thing, because we may not know whether we are going to fish out a price catch or not. So due to the decline in the trend, so these communities are affected. And if we talk about the fish species, mostly it is because the entire system, Indian major carp was dominating. So earlier, if we see that the major carp, the most of the Brahmaputra river system was dominated by the major carp. So this was a bit higher than the 13.6%. It was around 15, probably around 16 or so in the early decade. And now the major carp fisheries is mostly, it has come down, it has dwindled. The total catch composition in the entire catch, the major carp contributes very less amount. And in that, we are seeing some catfish and some miscellaneous fish is also coming. So we can summarize that the Indian major carp fisheries in the entire river system and associated floodplains have been affected mostly. So this is the most vulnerable group.
What kind of adaptation plans are being taken up by the government to address the issues and concerns around fisheries conservation? And also, what kind of management mechanisms are available and implemented by the government presently?
Now, coming to the adaptation plans, see, at government level, there are numerous measures are being taken. As all of us, we know that this in Assam, there is a legislation called Assam Fisheries Act, and since 1953, fishing of rohu, katla, mrigal, and and the other fish that is called mahasis. Of course, this is mahasis is a cold water fish, which is of less than 22.9 cm in length, is being prohibited. First prohibited during during first of April. From the 1st of April, the ban is being advocated in the proclaimed fisheries. And apart from that, we have mesh size regulations are also observed, and use of exploitative and poisons are also prohibited in the region. But there are provisions in the Indian Fisheries Act as well as the Assam Fisheries rules for penalty. But then at the community level and as well as the implementation level, there are there are a lot of things needs to be carried out, and some areas of the riverine system or the wetlands can be identified as the breeding ground, and in situ conservation approach also needs to be augmented. So this is my observation regarding the adaptation plans at the government level. When we talk about this management of fisheries, this actually the entire Brahmaputra river system has been divided into several portions, and this has been actually, but traditionally this is being auctioned to the cooperative societies, and based on the group number. They say it's a group number, GR number, and this is being done at the government level, and there are clear policies at the government level to lease out the water bodies. That is the fisheries. That is the fisheries, sale of fisheries. There is a clear-cut directive that sale of fisheries is to be settled, or is to be leased out to the fishermen cooperatives across the basin, or across the Brahmaputra river system. But then these cooperatives, the fishermen cooperatives, and the management is in most of the cases there are a lot of litigations, and at government level, government is also not getting proper revenue, and since there are a lot of litigations, so the management of this water bodies are at the cooperative level are not properly managed, because there are a lot of, as I said, there are a lot of litigations, there are a lot of rivalries between and amongst the cooperatives, amongst the fishermen, and there are at certain point of time, the cooperatives are also not very properly organized, so to say, because cooperatives, fisheries cooperatives, or rather fishermen cooperatives, mostly are run by the traditional fisher folks. So the cooperative management, probably the management, the art of managing the cooperatives is again in an area which the traditional fisher folks needs some capacity building, and apart from that, these cooperatives, when they lease out, when they go for leasing, mostly there are some competition, and in some cases they settle the fisheries at a very high rate, and which is exorbitant, which they cannot give, which they cannot in turn deposit to the government, and in turn these cooperatives run into a sort of a cashless, in a sort of a very chaotic situation, because if they cannot, if they fail to provide the revenue in a timely basis, these cooperatives are being barred from again participating in the auctioning process. So that is a part with the that is a management part on the fisheries cooperatives. And the fisheries cooperatives mostly, apart from the leasing out, they do not engage in like aquaculture practices.
The government of Assam and government of India also has got some programs, for involving the communities, fisher population, we call it here, actual fishermen, who are actually, their livelihood is basically, whose livelihood are basically dependent on, water resources or the fisheries sector. There are few programs. One of them, what we have been, we have implemented earlier, and from this year onwards, with the launching of a mega program or the mega schemes by government of India, by allocating almost 20,000 crores of rupees into this sector. There are livelihood assurance scheme is there, where during ban period, fishing ban period, which starts from 1st April to 15th July, there the communities are basically they are not without any job at that time. So what the plan is to give them assistance of financial assistance in the form of saving come relief. So that has been now like given thrust, and this year we are targeting to like almost more than around we are targeting more than I think 20,000 fishermen population to be supported. So this is only one aspect. This will not do. We may have to also think for like alternative livelihood for them. Otherwise, however strict measures or enforcement of law or the fishing ban is done, that definitely doesn't go as far as it is expected. So along with your like some assistance in the form of livelihood assurance, you must also think of some alternate livelihood for them. Then only I think in true sense you can help, or you can convince them from going to fishing during the season when we are expecting to get the population established in the basin.
How best to address this situation? Given the fact of the matter is, as we said, the traditional fisher folks they do not have proper assets, and to cope with the ban season when there is a ban in the fishing. So how best we can address the situation? So this is again at there are several thoughts at the government level. Government is also seriously considering to provide some sort of livelihoods to them. But at present, government of Assam is more concerned about the conservation of the indigenous fish in the entire basin. This is at the policy level. I think a lot needs to be done to address this issue.
মাছের সংরক্ষণ আর ব্যবস্থার জন্য আপনাদের কি ভূমিকা আছে কিংবা হতে পারে?
সরকারের দেওয়া মাছ মারা আইন আমরা জানি বা মানি। 3 মাস আমরা মাছ মারি না, গর্ভবতী মাছ বা ডিমেলা বাচ্চা মাছ। মাছগুলো দেখার জন্য বা নদী ভালো রাখার জন্য আমাকে সরকারের সহযোগিতা লাগে।
3 মাস বদ্ধ দিছে, কিন্তু অথচ আমরা 3 মাস যে মারি না, 3 মাসের মাছটা তো বড় হওয়া লাগে, কিন্তু আমরা তো মাছে যাই না, কিন্তু 3 মাস আমরা কিভাবে চলবো? এখন আমাদের তো অসুবিধা হয়ে যায়, মাছ না মারলে তো ভাত খাওয়া চলে না, আমার সংসার চলে না।
Anupamji, how do we best address the difficulties faced by the traditional fisher folk during the ban period? And do you think financial assistance mechanism would work?
We should try to find out some alternative livelihood models. There are certain models in Bangladesh where during the ban period of Hilsa, they provide some sort of assistance in terms of not in terms of cash, in terms of kinds, or in terms of like grains. This is associated the closer season of fishing is associated with some of the remunerative mechanisms. But then here in India, especially in Assam, this sort of financial assistance mechanism is for the subsistence fisherfolk is yet to be finalized. Yet not has been finalized at the government level. We have to wait and see at community level what is the how best the community can cope up to develop the alternative livelihood systems. I have a beautiful example where I can just share some of my grassroots level experience. There is a place called Jogi Gopa where the around 200 to 300 odd fishermen, they fish out during October, September to October till November. They fish out. They are actively fishing on Hilsa fish. But then, as all of us we know, Hilsa is very much highly is being exploited, and the juveniles of the Hilsas are also being exploited at a very high level and an alarming level. So we tried to dissuade the fishermen not to catch the this juvenile Hilsa in the Brahmaputra river. So and of course our persuasion and our community level dialogues were not associated with the financial assistance mechanism. We didn't say anything on that issue, but then what we said is we had several sort of brainstorming session and community dialogues to dissuade them from killing indiscriminately the juvenile Hilsa, which we call it as Jatka. But then which is also we tried with some of the mesh size regulation in the rivers. For in fact, this we have been carrying out since 2016. But then with our effort and with several community dialogues and the pressure on these fish, especially on the juvenile Hilsa, has reduced to a certain extent. But then we have to still work on it, and finally some sort of assistance mechanism, if it is associated with some sort of conservation approach, then probably we might get some better results. So this is my observation.
নদী দিয়ে আমরা সংসার চালাই, নদী দিয়ে পরিয়াল চালাই, নদী দিয়ে সব কিছু আমার চলে, কিন্তু নদী ছাড়া তো আমরা বাঁচবো না, নদীর সামনে আমরা ওই জন্য থাকি। আমাদের ব্রহ্মপুত্রতে বড় মাছ তো নাই, বাংলাদেশে বহুত মাছ আছে, কিন্তু অথচ ইলিশ মাছটা এখানে নাই, ইলিশ মাছের দাম বেশি, আমরা খুব অসুবিধাতে চলছি, মাছের সংখ্যাটা এখানে কম, বাংলাদেশের মাছের সংখ্যাটা আছে কিন্তু অথচ যেতে পারি না, মাছ আনতেও পারি না। আপনারা একটা ব্যবস্থা করে যদি দিতে পারেন তাহলে ওখানকার সরকার থেকে আপনারা যদি কিছু ব্যবস্থা করে আমাদের আসা যাওয়ার জায়গাটা রাস্তাটা যদি করে দিতে পারেন তাহলে আমরা কিছু ওখান থেকে মাছ মারে আনি এখানে কিছু চলতে পারি আর কি।
Our neighbor Bangladesh has been applauded for their efforts in Hilsa conservation. Do you think transboundary cooperation with them would help in the overall water governance, and would this help in addressing the declining catches in Assam, which is one of the reasons why people have started thinking of leaving the fishing trade altogether? I would also like to know your views on biofloc fishing, which is one of the emerging fishery models that are coming up.
Definitely transboundary cooperation or the collaboration that what you have spoken, including Bangladesh and some other countries, is a welcoming thing. Definitely. I can't comment much because I don't know much about the Bangladesh, what like conservation efforts they are doing it. Of course, I know a little bit about Hilsa conservation. They have started there and doing good. Similarly, as far as conservation efforts in the Brahmaputra Basin, except like some of the organizations which have worked in India, like Fisheries has done some assessment. Central Inland Fisheries Research Institute has done some assessment on the biota, like the fish populations. some assessments are there. The major, areas that we have to take into account while planning would be, taking the river basin dependent people who are actually depending on livelihood, a source of livelihood. How they have been affected, what are the causes, and what could be the solution. So definitely river basin program for conservation would help us in taking a program for conservation of fish as a whole in the entire region of Assam, particularly for the Lower Assam region. If you come to Assam and you will go like to the agriculture sector, deep into agriculture sector, there is a shift of changeover from agriculture to fisheries. So that's a very good it's a very good thing for us. You see, the amount of money that you can get from 1 acre of land is not possible through agriculture.
Yes.
So that thing has been established in the state of Assam, and because of consumption rate is very high here, more than 90% people take fish, just like Bengal and Bangladesh and this thing. Okay, so more than 90% people are here fish eaters. They love fish and they pay for fish. So fish itself is a very lucrative job. Of course, I agree with you in one point, that definitely the fishers that go to the rivers for catching fish might have come down or declined. And there are reasons, very well, that they don't maybe catch per afford from river has declined. And due to that, they may not be getting sufficient amount of, catch to support their livelihood. And with the advent of so many schemes like MG and Renga, where they get around 400 rupees if they do some physical labor. So under such circumstances, your resource of the river should be able to support his livelihood. Then only a person will be drawn to that job. So if you see the fish in the form of culture, you see fish in the form of, trading has got a lot of opportunities out here in Assam. And that is drawing, post-COVID fisheries has been now here in Assam, one of the attractive, attractive agricultural sector, which is attracting a lot of youth into it. Because of sustainability, they can, expect from this. So that is why I'll tell you what you mentioned, two things. One is, like sustainability. Definitely. So we have my experience in this field have been almost 20 years now, working with even National Fisheries Development Board at national level. So fisheries sector is the only sector which can, support you, your livelihood support may be sustainable and very good opportunity. That is for sure. Now, with the coming of new technologies like biofloc, what you just mentioned, if you see, now the government has, this year, we are targeting, almost more than 50 biofloc units this year. So, biofloc is showing some sort of, like urban or semi-urban areas aquaculture means possibility. Basically, this aquaculture would have been a rural commodity, you can say. But now, with the advent of, like biofloc, RAS, and, even integrated in-pond raceways, these things have now changed, like perception of the people. The top business class people are into this sector now. If you come to Assam, I can tell you, with the government assistance, we have established 13 number of RAS so far. And most of the people are, like engineers, doctors who have taken this. So the perception has changed, which can, employment opportunity may be multiplied, manifold. So biofloc, even at the grassroots level, with, of course, like, support from nowadays, YouTube is very much there, or, through some literature over the internet, people have gathered information and started on their own. That is very much, encouraging. With this, like response, we are going for around 50 numbers of biofloc this year. We are targeting to assist people, and mostly we're targeting both, you can say, rural, urban, or semi-urban areas. And in coming years, I think, like technologies like RAS, biofloc, or in-pond raceways may open up new vistas for the fishes folk, which may, result what you have said, stopping them from leaving the job and getting more into it, so that it can feed them, as well as they can also generate some employment opportunities. Because biofloc, as you mentioned, has become tremendous popular even in the rural areas. It has become tremendous popular even in the rural areas because it's a cost-cutting technology, and you are getting maximum output. So definitely this has got future.